Gambit Chads, do I have a treat for you. Typically, if anyone were to show you a wild gambit, me or anyone on the internet, it would be very fun, but it would come with the caveat that if your opponent knows what they're doing, can find the refutation somehow, no matter how hard it might be, then, you might just lose. But that's a risk you're willing to take to play that awesome kind of chess and to surprise your opponent in the opening. What if I told you you could have it all? What if I told you that you can play a gambit that you can get pretty much every time against d4, and that there's really nothing phenomenal that your opponent can do about it? That you can surprise them right out of the opening, and there's just no easy refutation. That is what we're talking about here with this confusing move order that I'll show you right now, and that'll explain soon enough about why we do it this way and what White's options are. The point is to get this position, that after we play here a6 on the second move, c5 on the third move, and White's just doing normal d4 stuff. They're playing here c4, knight c3. We play c5. They answer back d5, the most common move. Now we play b5, sacrificing this pawn. And immediately here, we have the opportunity to strike at the center, playing e6. After which, there's a number of ways White can go wrong with d6, with taking this pawn, with trying to defend, and then knight d6 check, with trying to defend this pawn. A number of ways White can go wrong. What is the point of playing it this way? I'd like to address that first, and I am very excited to look at all of White's options and all the exciting stuff here, and how there is really no easy way out for White. And I'll show you what I mean by easy way out. So, number one, the point of playing it this way is that this might look to you like a Benko gambit, where we play here c5, d5, and b5. This is one of the most common gambits in chess. Like you see this at very high levels of chess. Very common move here to play b5. They play pawn takes, you play a6, and now it's actually the second most common move here, but it's not considered a good move, is that you can play knight c3 to defend this pawn, but your knight's a little bit off sides, and we're going to be taking advantage of that in that main line. But if you can get them to transpose to this position, that's great. The only issue with the standard Benko gambit is that White can actually just take the pawn, and then, it's a gambit, it's fun. There's a ton of theory here. I'm certainly not the first to show you this. So that's with the Benko gambit. Now, this might look something a bit like the wagon gambit, which a lot of you probably know from Jonathan Schrantz's channel. Knight c3, and immediately playing here b5, sacrificing this pawn, still trying to play b4 and bother this knight, so they take it. And now here, well, there's a couple moves here, right? There's the main line wagon gambit, and then there's this other move c5, which I tried to make work for actually a long time. Believe it or not, there's a lot of things that I try when I'm checking openings that I don't show you guys because they are not the best, and I'm really showing you probably about 1/10,000th of the things that I've checked, but they are the best 1/10,000th. So c5, if White plays d5 here, dream position, right? The issue is that they can actually just take this pawn. If queen a5 check, they can come back. Here, White is generally fine. There's the other very fun wagon gambit where you play e5, sacrifice another pawn, knight e4. There, I would recommend checking out Schrantz's channel. There's a number of ways White can go wrong, but my test for a gambit is really if White were to just do the most obvious, normal, natural things. Knight f3, e3, bishop e2, castles, right? Are they going to lose? And in this position, the answer is no. White's kind of fine if they go knight f3. The worst thing that's going to happen to them is that you'll get this pawn back. There's a lot of cool things that Black can try, but here, White is generally fine if they just do this, right? So how is it possible that White can just develop normally? This is the problem we're trying to solve. Develop normally, stay principled in chess, but still lose. That's what we're going to try to make happen here with our opening here against knight c3. So we're going to play here a6, c5, d5, and now b5. Also, okay, what's the point of playing a6 first then if you're just playing c5 next anyway without sacrificing this pawn? If you play c5 now and then a6, White here has a great move. Knight c3 still, you can see, very much the most common move in this position, but still a lot of people are finding this nice move a4. a4 is a very strange move to play, and it's strange that it's actually good, but it totally shuts down any ideas we have of playing b5. And at this point, we're just going to be probably playing just like a mainline Benoni, kind of with here, take, d6, develop here, and then again, you can play this, but this is a real chess opening. You're on the wrong channel if you want those. So the other option is we have here b5. Well, actually, it's not an option. We can't play b5. They can take it, and they open up this pin onto our rook. So a4 shuts that down. So All that to say, this is why we do it this way. We play a6, they play an ac3, we play c5, they play d5, we play b5, take, e6, and we get everything that they want. Why does d6 lose? Why does take and knight d6 check lose? These are the most common moves. Why does just defending this pawn lose? Or at least is not a great option. These are life's great questions that I will answer as soon as we've covered all of white's other options about what they can do in this position, right? Because if we could just actually force this position every time, then we kind of would have just solved the Benko gambit. So it stands to reason that there might be some other options for white to play. So first of all, after a6, you're going to get knight c3 overwhelmingly. I'll actually touch at non-knight c3 moves a little bit at the end of the video, but this will be a video dedicated to c4. If you want to check out some options to play against the London, I recommend checking out one of my other videos. But here, okay, after c5, what if white doesn't play d5? Here's the thing about c5. White players who play d4 and c4 are trained to answer c5, or at least they should be, trained to answer c5 with d5. Because if they don't do that, and these pawns kind of just disappear, or are treated in any way, then this pawn is kind of almost a little dumb being left there. Like, it at least wasn't worth the time, and probably should have been home, and white probably should have been developing normally, like how you would have seen from a Sicilian, right? So for example here, like, if white plays knight f3, and we take, right? So this position would have been like a Sicilian opening, kind of. It would have been like e4, c5, knight f3, we do something, trade, and then this is the structure that we see in the other thing. And so c4 is also an option. So in this position, it does stand to reason that white might want to next move, play e4, and make a great grip on the center. So that's the reason why knight f3 is played a little bit after c5. However, we're not going to let them, and here black is actually better after this nice strike d5. And this a6 move is coming in handy, very much so, because there's going to be no bishop to b5 check or knight to b5 to bother us at all. And so here after d5, white is not in a great situation. They have two main options. They can take this pawn or play e3. Let's check out e3. And here, you guessed it, we might be able to just kind of take the whole center, e5. Why not? Why not? Just attack this knight. Now we've got two pawns in the middle. Knight retreats to target our e5 pawn. And here, just keep going, e4. Keep attacking that knight. It can come back. Just trade. Now we can play b5 using the fact that we've played a6. Now we have potentially a fianchetto to work with, but why not? Hit the tempo on that bishop, develop our bishop pretty nicely, castles. And here, this is already a position where I kind of like black because they've got both bishops that can cook, that can point towards the enemy king, whereas this dark square bishop is kind of totally locked out of the game. And black here has some attacking opportunities there, especially down those diagonals, where it's kind of hard for white to bring pieces to defend their own king. So this position, I already very much like black, but it's one of white's options. More common in this position, you could expect pawn takes d5, but after knight takes d5, again, this is looking very good for black. White here, the most common try is e4. It's not a good one, and the reason is that we can trade on c3 and then play e5. And now the thing is, they're left with kind of a very weak pawn here. So after knight f3, we can trade and force them to play king takes, but I think even better to just play this move queen c7. And here I've actually drawn a lot of arrows already. But in addition to defending this pawn and attacking this pawn, maybe, all we're going to do is develop really, really nicely. Like our pieces will come to beautiful squares, castles, everything's very, very solid. Rooks will come to the middle. Really, really nice position here for black, and actually a really pretty healthy advantage according to the computer. So not a great option for white to allow pawn takes c3, giving them weakness there. They can try instead to take on d5. After queen takes, they don't really have much better than to just play e3. And now we play e5, knight f3, trade. It's always better to trade and force them to go king takes d1, and after knight c6 here, just a really, really nice position again for black. Not everything's going to be completely winning because this is such a legitimate opening, but again, you're black and you're better out of the opening. So that's already a win, and also, these are not the most probable outcomes. These are not the most probable outcomes, but yes, to summarize this position, the bishop can sit nicely here, castles long can come with check, so maybe bishop g4 and you can threaten e4, but yeah, a really nice position. And again, you've got two bishops that'll cook, and this dark square bishop is a little bit jammed in. And again, you see a6 being a nice, very useful move here. There's no bishop to b5, but you're doing this because of the most probable outcome of getting that crazy gambit, while also risking pretty much nothing. Like, that's what you're risking, a slightly better endgame, right? Well, we'll see. We'll see what the best options are for white. I intend to be absolutely as honest as possible for both sides, showing you the engine recommendation and showing even what I would play, putting myself in white shoes against someone who I know will have this repertoire, right? So That is what I'm trying to do for you all here. So there's a couple other moves to cover other than knight f3. There's e3, and then there's the engine recommendation, which I'm going to show to you next. e3, again, not too scary of a move. You have a couple options here if you're black. I like the idea of keeping this bishop locked in. Like, if they play e3 to defend this at any point, I'm not really so excited about making that trade to free you. We can play your d5, and this kind of transposes to maybe some more common positions. But the a6 move is not super helpful here, and not my top recommendation for you to play this way. My top recommendation for you to play is with e6, and after knight to f3, just d5 yourself. And you might be saying, well, this is totally symmetrical. It's not totally symmetrical. We've played a6, they've played knight c3. It looks like maybe their move is more useful than ours. Well, let's see about that. If they play bishop e2 or bishop d3, which are combined very common occurrence, combined to be more common than c takes d5. If they play bishop e2, now we take that pawn. As soon as they moved it once, right? Now we take it to make you move it again, but we don't want to let you do it in one turn, right? So that's kind of what we're working with there. So bishop d3, we would have even been attacking that bishop if after this capture. Takes now b5, right? We can hit him immediately again thanks to our a6 pawn. Bishop e2 and bishop to b7 already here. Black has a very, very nice position. Again, we've got two bishops working. We've got this bishop, which can develop anywhere here and can develop in one turn. And this bishop working here, whereas this dark square bishop we've never actually taken here yet to free you. So here, I like this very, very much for black, and indeed the engine does as well after that bishop has to move twice. A little bit better choice for white is to take this pawn so that they don't have to deal with that before developing their bishop. So now, like after bishop e2, we can take on d4 and play knight c6 in either order. Both are fine. White can try to take c5 and leave us with an isolated pawn, but in general, these are actually pretty pleasant positions after bishop e2. It would be one thing if this bishop were on the other side of its e3 pawn, but instead it's kind of locked in there, and again, we have actually a really, really nice position, and it's important to know how to play these structures. The deal about isolated queen pawns is that the more pieces white, in this case, the side facing the isolated queen pawn, trades, the better it is for white. We want to avoid trades, right? Because that's kind of the deal with structural weaknesses in general, right? A structural weakness, oh, they have doubled pawns, oh, they have a weak pawn. Well, that's not so important in the grand scheme of things if, like, I'm checkmating you, and, oh, by the way, I have a weak pawn, right? But as you, like it's not so important in the grand scheme of things when you think about it. But then, like, if both kings are safe, you know, queens are traded, there's less dynamic activity in the position. Then all of a sudden, the fact that you have, like, a very weak pawn that can be attacked, that can't be defended by a fellow pawn, kind of becomes a more important issue, right? Because the idea of checkmating or of crazy tactics happening in the position get lower and lower and lower as things trade. So that's kind of what's going on here. And in terms of this position, yes, we have lots of diagonals to work with for our bishop, including one we're not even using here that we intend to use, and I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, both diagonals are working very, very well, so that's one thing the isolated queen pawn does for us. Like, for example, if we're on e6, it would be blocking us in a little bit. But white is going to want to be trading off as many pieces as possible for that reason and to try to attack on d5. What you can do is play knight c6, and here's a lot of ways that you can play. So, like, the rooks will just come to the middle, queen d6, and this is a nice idea that you've already played a6, which is actually a very, very useful move, and one you'd even play yourself in this position. The bishop can actually redirect itself, especially after this rook has moved in. Maybe so let's say, let's put some moves on the board. So let's say a3, let's play queen d6. Let's give you a feel for this position. So b4, bishop will come back to a7, bishop e2. Okay, we're activating that. And now let's say something like bishop g4, bishop f5, comes out, rook c1, rook d8, queen's coming here. Now after bishop b8, suddenly I've redirected. First of all, another idea I had was d4, but okay, let's say that's not happening. I play bishop b8, now I'm threatening mate on h2. So that's another idea that you can work with there. Here, knight e4, queen can shift over this way. So lots of attacking possibilities here being on the side of the isolated queen pawn. Anyway, this isn't, I kind of went on a little bit of tangent here. This isn't really mainly about IQP positions, but it's important, and you know, anything coming out of d4 positions has the opportunity to get in those sorts of structures. So after d4, I should touch on the top engine recommendation, and it's d takes c5. d5 is kind of the co-top engine recommendation, but it's very difficult to realize, and I'll show you what I mean. D takes c5, e6. So the thing is, almost no one's going to play d takes c5, and in fact, we're looking at it, yeah, only 8% of games in this position have d takes c5, and it's the top engine move. How do we figure that? Well, on principle, it doesn't make sense for white to want to trade the d for the c pawns, right? So it wouldn't, like c5, d5 being programmed to do that makes a lot of sense, and you're going to be right most of the time to do that if you're a white player. The thing is that white can make it very difficult for us to take this pawn back. However, the move is not the very appealing and second most common move b4, to defend the c5 pawn. Here, it kind of looks like, oh wow, that's a very solid pawn. Like any d6 or b6, you can just trade it off, and otherwise, you know, black's got to work around it. The thing is, the issue is b4 itself is not well defended. So a5 is playable, as is the other option here, b6, just threatening to go pawn takes c5. C takes b6 actually makes the problem even worse for white, because after just bishop takes b4, tempo on the knight. Again, you haven't developed anything here. The fact that pawn's on c4 is not looking like the most useful move in the world, now that it doesn't have like a strong center to defend, right? So bishop takes b4, bishop to d2, and now queen takes b6 in this position. And yes, I've already highlighted that white has no development here, whereas black has the opportunity for lots of development, is going to castle right away. I mean, to castle that many moves sooner than white, while down 0 material, and to be playing black is kind of crazy. This pin is kind of meaningless. You can just play queen a5, and yeah, everything develops really, really nicely here for black. Just a better position, down absolutely 0 pawns. So b4, not a good option for white. What about the most common move, knight to f3? Well, then we're in a situation where just bishop takes c5, and we've kind of made a pretty preferable trade for us with bishop takes c5. Furthermore, the second most common move here, bishop to g5, is not a good one. So e3 is the main move. However, it blocks in the bishop, so a lot of people might be trying to, oh, let me play bishop to g5 before I shut the door on it. However, bishop to g5 makes something unprotected in the enemy position, and we can take advantage of it right away with this nice move, queen to b6. Attack here, and all of a sudden, this sucks for white, right? They can't castle to defend this. They got to play e3 now, and now after queen takes b2, they're in a lot of trouble because we're hitting this knight, and yeah, our next move here is going to be bishop to b4, whether that's check or whether that's a pin, like whether you defend that or whether you move that away, like I'm going to want to play bishop to b4, and if you don't take this, I mean, I would love to play knight e4 as well. So it's actually a very important pawn. It's not just we're going fishing. It would be one thing if they were castled and we had no pin. Then our queen might be in a little bit of hot water. But it's a great fish to eat going fishing there. Bishop to b4, very weak diagonal now that they don't have their fish to defend their knight. So nice position there. Bishop to g5, not a great move. White's better off playing e3. And now we actually kind of transpose to d5. We can play here d5 with a pretty nice position. So what, with the same as the IQP, presumably, if they play c takes d5, as 60% of people do right away. So what is this great move that white has in this position that takes advantage of, like how would you not let us take this? Are you going to play bishop e3, but then, you know, that seems very awkward. Seems like we can attack this anyway, and you've stopped your development, and we can go after that bishop and such, right? So not a good choice. The best choice here is e4, just taking the middle. The issue for black is that if we just take this pawn on e5, and that this knight has no square other than knight g8. But here's where some really crazy lines come in. And this is a very interesting back and forth sort of sequence. So e4 comes, right? And that's the issue, right? If we could take and then like play d6 as well to stop e5, we'd be very happy coming out of the opening here. However, e4, bishop takes c5, there's e5. Do we have a however? Can we hit them back? What about queen b6? What about just letting that knight go? Yeah, we don't want to play knight g8, that kind of sucks. But if we can like kind of make you defend this f2 pawn, and then after knight g4, oh, we have that square, there's no queen there anymore, we're hitting this and this, we're in business, right? So we're hitting that f2 pawn and want to make you do something kind of awkward. Well, white needs to know what to do against this, right? If they play something like just like knight to h3, I think this is a mistake, I believe. Well, it's not the best. We can play knight g8 and we've made them play knight h3. But anyway, the crazy line and the best line for white is to play pawn takes f6. To allow this capture, takes f2, king e2. So, unfortunately, there's no queen e3 checkmate. There's a bishop there, but okay, can't we get a knight as well? And now if you do something else, I'll go queen to f2 check, which seems like a pretty big check. So what do you do here if you're white? What do you think? What do you think? Rook takes g1. It's such a good move. This is such a nice line. Rook takes g1, so suddenly the issue is going to start becoming pretty apparent for black, is that you have no pieces out other than your queen. So white's sacrificing their rook, but now they come in with queen d6. Queen d6, a great move. It threatens mate, and it also does a secret other thing. It defends h2. So now we need to deal with mate, either by this or by this, right? Just to not get mated. But now with h2 defended, bishop e3 they can play, with the king's defense, with the queen's defense, to bury our queen even further. And now after this nice move, knight to e4, yeah, as the arrows indicate, they're just going to go here and then here, because our pawn's not there, and there's nothing we can do about it because we don't have any pieces in the game. All the pieces are on the back rank, and the queen's actually buried in the corner. And so white will just checkmate here. absolutely no defense. So a really crazy line there, if white knows it all, or if white can come up with it all, rather, that they can get, that I just discovered there. So we can't go bishop takes c5 in the end. In the end, the best thing to do is to actually just play knight to c6, is to just stop e5 and try to take c5 next turn, which is totally fine, actually. You also stop b4 by virtue of doing that, and knight c6 is a move we want to play anyway. Knight f3 doesn't reintroduce e5 by any means, because now you've blocked your queen from controlling g4, and this is just, whoops, this just kind of sucks for white with those things under attack. What white should do is actually now take advantage of the fact that their pawn is on e4, and not on e2 anymore. So they played e4, knight c6, and now can play bishop e3 to try to defend c5. So their queen can control the g4 square in this position, again, without the pawn in the way. So bishop e3, totally fine move here. What would we do if our opponent's finding all the moves? Bishop e3, we just play queen to a5. And now the distribution of moves here kind of shocks me. These moves are not good moves, none of them. a3, knight to f3, queen a5, we're threatening two things, right? a3, knight f3, it deals with none of these things. I also want to take e4. I just pinned your knight. b4 here, I can just take here, and I'm attacking your queen as well. So queen a5, odds are this will end pretty well for you, actually, with queen a5, in spite of white playing some of the top engine moves to get to this point. Because, yeah, you're attacking e4, you're attacking c5. The queen is doing a lot of those things. The best move for white is all the way down here on the list of moves, queen to a4, to try and trade off for that queen that's doing those things. So now, if you take e4 or you take c5, they'll trade off for the queen and then take your free piece. So you can't do that. You have to trade queens with them. The best move being, yes, just takes a4. Sorry, the best move being knight g4, rather. Attacking this bishop, they take on a5, you take a5, then the bishop needs to move away, and you can just collect the c5 pawn. And so this is white following actually all of the engine recommendations, even just to get to this point. And it's like plus 0.5, plus 0.6. So. That is the best option white can do. It is statistically unlikely for you to get there, but I have to cover it. So here is what you'll probably get, and this is where the fun begins. After d5, what they're trained to do, b5, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in a sticky situation. I'm going to cover 4 moves here. I'm going to cover c takes b5, I'm going to cover e4, I'm going to cover b3, and I'm going to cover the top engine move that's all the way down on the list. That I'll get to after. It's none of those moves. First, let's talk about some bad moves. It's b3. b3, the thing is, I'll clue you in about something, actually, to help you understand this position a little bit more. Because we're going to talk about taking this pawn, absolutely, and I'm very, very excited for that. If white does absolutely nothing in this position, what is our next move? If you said pawn takes c4, you're wrong. If we put pawn takes e4, white has no issues just playing e4. We need to play d6 to not let them overrun us. Just take here, knight f3, castles, and it's very pretty. And we have this pawn on a6 that's kind of now a little dumb, right? So that's not the point of it. The point of it is really to play b4 and to force this knight to some very, very bad square, and then to kind of just like take the center, right? Or to undermine it with a hit like e6, right? But forcing the knight all the way and kind of locking down and taking some extra space on the queen side is a pretty substantial achievement, you know, if this pawn can just cruise through b5 unhit, right? So the third most common move in this position, b3, makes absolutely no sense because we never wanted to take c4. We never wanted to take c4 because white can just play e4 and play bishop takes c4 back very easily. So with b3, we're doing great. We're in business. They got very, very scared of us. And so all we're going to do is now we're going to go to the Benko spot for the bishop. We're going to play g6, and the bishop's going to have a beautiful, beautiful time on g7, hitting a lot of targets here. So for example, bishop b2, white should play, and after bishop to g7, here already white is maybe feeling the sting a little bit of that being not defended. There's some ideas such as knight e4 with that pin. White here should probably play something like queen c2, a most common move, kind of defend some things around here. All we're going to do is castles. White here playing e4. We'll just follow some most common moves here. And here you have a couple options. You can just play d6 and kind of hang out. What I like to do is if I'm castled and my opponent's not, is to play this move e6, is to try and open the center, right? We want to open the center. We want to play takes. We want to play rook e8 and try and play b4, really attack this e4 pawn and try to cause a lot of problems for them, right? You know, okay, they weren't willing to accept our gambit. They played b3 here, but you're kind of far from castling unless you want to go that way, in which case b5 would be a very useful move to help start an attack. So otherwise, yeah, you're going to have to hang out in the center a little bit against my rook before you're going to be able to castle. So b3, not a great choice for white. It is the third most common move, which bodes well for us. Great. That's great news. So yes, c takes b5 we have to cover. We also have to cover e4. e4 is the second most common move, and it's kind of an interesting one because it looks very stupid. Because we have this nice move, just b4, as we mentioned, right? Why would you put your pawn there? I'm now going to take it once your knight moves. Here's the thing. White here has two moves. They have e5 and they have knight a4. Both are pretty interesting. Both are, I mean, anything else is actually just a very bad move. Anything else really just gives us the pawn. They have to specifically go knight a4. So here's the deal. If they play e5, we take, they take. It's a pretty interesting position. It's a pretty weird position. Material is even at this exact moment. We each have all 8 pawns and our -1 knight. Presumably, we're going to take this and they're going to take this. Or we can, like, take here, but after bishop takes b2, both these captures are kind of awkward, right? G takes f6. If this ever happens, right, like, let's say this and just d6, right, or something like this, you're not going to want to castle this way because of this file, and you're not going to want to castle this way because of this file, right? So you don't want this to happen to you if you're black. You also don't really want a situation to happen to you where after queen to e2 check, you must go queen to e7, right? Bishop e7 here, there's d6, right? So going queen to e7 can be a little bit uncomfortable. So for example, let's say, right. So let's say here, we have a solution to a couple problems that also invites some mistakes for white. We can play a useful move no matter what, which is this move d6. Stopping white from going d6, right? So like if we took here, you know, there was issues of them going d6 and then queen to e2 check. Sorry, I said it a little bit inaccurately the first time. This situation kind of sucks, right? With queen to e2 coming next. So we need to play d6 here. Now we invite a couple of mistakes from white. They have a few captures they can make. If they take on g7, we're actually totally in business because bishop takes g7 and now we've defended this pawn. They don't want to take it anymore because we will fork their king and their rook. So now we're putting extra pressure on b2, and we're very, very happy about these turn of events. If they take on e7, this is actually more playable than you might think, because queen takes e7 is not really something you want to do, because it kind of jams in this bishop a little bit. We're really just going to go bishop takes e7, and in this situation, yeah, white can take this pawn. We're totally fine with that happening in almost any case. We're going to put our bishop on f6, trying to target that pawn. It's not really a useful one so much. We just want to castle. We really want more than anything to have this nice diagonal for our bishop. And for this bishop that would otherwise be very jammed in, to have lots of targets, lots of freedom, and for both bishops, as I talked about before, to be playing well with also this rook coming to the open file. And white's extra pawn here looks kind of meaningless. So we're totally fine with them going pawn takes c3. For example, in this position, pawn takes c3, not a particularly dangerous move. Now after e takes f6, we're much happier. The arrows are correct. Queen e2, we can play bishop e7, or there's no fear of d6. That's kind of the point of playing d6 a little bit sooner. And yeah, all we want to do here is we want to play bishop e7, we want to castle, and we want to put our bishop right there on f6. So we're going to play f5, put our bishop on f6. This knight can maybe come to e5 as well. And yeah, this extra pawn, very, very meaningless. So we're totally good about that. So this move d6 is kind of like a really nice one. And it's kind of funny. Like it kind of begs the question, what would we do if we got another move? Because we don't really love either of these captures. You can play e takes f6. Another move you can play here is even knight d7, just because the pawns are not nearly as important. Like now we're starting to play knight takes f6, right? So it kind of asks them to do something. g6 is also playable because you can play here like queen takes e7 and then bishop g7. But the pawns are not nearly as important as just grabbing these diagonals of putting your bishop right there and castling. Like, yeah, you can have that, you can have that. I just want the activity, and I want to get my rook to the middle while your king's in the middle as soon as possible. So. b4, e5, it's an interesting option. It leads to a relatively equal position, maybe even a slight pull for black. White has a better move here, which is knight to a4. This is a very good choice. This is an interesting position because it looks like, wow, we can just take this for free. We actually even defend c5. The issue is that after bishop to d3, you really have nothing better than just to retreat. And now after knight takes c5, that's actually a pretty clean pawn. This is playable because e5 is actually a pretty nice move targeting the knight. But this is kind of, white actually got kind of a good center here. Not so obvious how to play this if you're black. It's playable, but white is definitely a little bit better here after knight to a4. My recommendation would be to play the very simple d6, just keeping your pawn structure, defending this. And yeah, we got an achievement here. We played b4, knocked that knight to the edge of the board, and really kind of locked down the queen side. So we played d6, e4 is still hanging, they should play bishop d3. And now after e5, you can fight for an equal stake in the center. And it's kind of a King's Indian, except we've kind of stopped them from getting out in counterplay on the queen side a little bit White could play for f4 a little bit, but what you want to play is bishop e7, and maybe try to play bishop to g5, trade off your bad dark square bishop for their good dark square bishop, and castle, and also try to get in f5 in these sorts of positions. But it's a very locked center and relatively equal position here. So that brings us to the fun stuff. In terms of White's options back in this position after we play b5, we've covered now e4, we've covered b3, and now we're going to cover c takes b5. And after this, I'll cover White's stockfish recommendation in this position, but I think I've kind of hinted at it in terms of what our threat is and what our threat isn't in this position for the black side, and what White should do about that accordingly. So maybe you guys can think about that, but in the meantime, let's get to the most exciting part with pawn takes b5, a takes b5, and knight takes b5. Real quick, don't fall for this mate trap. Don't fall for this checkmate trap, actually. There is another move out of the knight takes b5, and it's worth covering because I don't want... I want the best for you guys. I want the highest win percentage possible. That's what I work to give you all. And so I'd be remiss not to cover this weird option that's 25% of games, because I think some white players try to get you with this. But e4 here. So, of course, wow. What a gift. I'm still not even down a pawn. b4, and I open this file, and I'm going to hit your knight. So you jump in knight b5. Wow, I'm now up a pawn. Knight takes e4, queen to e2. Oh, no worries. I'll just come back here. Everything must be fine. Everything must be fine. Everything was not fine. Don't fall for that trap. After knight to b5, all you need to do is play this move d6, not get checkmated. You're not down a pawn, but you're not going to be up a pawn either. They can defend this one on e4. All you need to do is play g6, bishop to g7. Your bishop will cook down here. Your rook will cook down here. You'll castle. You'll be totally fine. And if this knight bothers you at any moment, just play knight here and knight to c7. And this is actually a little bit better for black. Not even a gambit. So here, speaking of, let's do the gambit part. Knight takes b5. Okay, we got this position. We got the position we wanted. Let's talk about this. e6, we're going to hit this center right away. What are you going to do about it, Mr. White Pieces? You can play here d6. Let's talk about that, because that is the third most common move, and it looks like, oh my god. Oh my god, they got a pawn on d6. They're going to play knight c7 next. Oh my goodness. Here's the thing about the knight on b5, though. It is not protected. The fact that it's not protected and that you've got a diagonal open onto your king means that I can play queen a5 check anytime I want and force your knight to come right back to c3. Right? It's not defended. You can't play bishop to d2 or queen to d2 because I will just take here. So that knight had to come right back. No chance to play knight c7, and now we'll follow that up with another great move. You've got no pieces out. Knight to e4. Great spot for the knight. d6 is hanging. c3 is hanging. What are you going to do about it? You play here queen to c2. I'll just play bishop to b7. Bishop takes d6 is going to be a great way to recapture this. This knight can come to b4, continuing to attack that. Take the a6 route, not the c6 route. Don't block your bishop from defending this knight. But yeah, you're going to keep attacking this queen. You're going to keep using this. You're going to be doing great. You're going to play bishop takes d6. You're not going to be down a pawn. King's king castle. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Bishop's cooking. Knight's cooking. Rooks will be cooking down here. Lots of cooking. So bishop to d2 is an option for white that they can play to try and break up this pin. Let's take that bishop. Queen takes d2. And now white here would have an extra pawn and a very strong extra pawn. Maybe they can play e4 and e5. They can play knight to f3 and everything. And then maybe try again to bring that knight here once that bishop can defend the b5 square. They'd have all that if it weren't for this really, really nice move. And that's probably another reason why people who maybe even see queen to a5 check will still play d6. It is because you can just play rook to a6. Really, really nice move. Rook to a6. Who'da thunk? Bishop is not there to control it. And all of a sudden, we're just going to play rook takes d6 next with a great position. White can do one thing to try and stop it, and it is knight to e4, and it is the most common move. To try to defend here, they're trying to use their one piece that they've moved, but they've moved it a lot of times, and they haven't touched their king side. So knight to e4, what we can do is we can keep bringing out pieces trying to attack that knight, and this will go in our favor. For example, they trade queens, rook takes a5. They're now going to have to move the knight, and after bishop takes d6, we are equal in material, but not equal in development. We're going to have a really, really nice bishop pair. For example, like let's say something like castles long to attack here. Not a great move, actually, because we can play bishop e5, targeting the knight that was defending this a2 pawn. We're going to castle or play even king to e7 with no problem. d5, lots of space we can do. And yeah, the rooks are going to come over. Great, great position for black in the endgame. A really nice advantage. So yeah, not a great option for white. Their best bet is actually to try to play like e4, even to just try and develop a little bit. We can just play rook takes d6, of course. They were attacking our rook there, actually, with the bishop. Should watch out for that. And they will shift over, queen c2, and now just knight c6. And really, really nice position. A funny spot for the rook, but we're actually cutting off their castle, so they're very far from castling here. Something they could try is to play like knight f3. We'll play here even g6, just come out that way with the bishop. Why not? It'll cook that way, and it kind of seems a little bit blocked this way. If bishop to e2, we play here knight d4. All of a sudden, the knight is hitting so many things and can't be captured because if pawn takes d4, their king's still in the middle. We are pinning and winning that knight. We are pinning and winning that knight. So good stuff. I know I'm talking really fast, but I am really, really excited, and I want to show you guys as much as possible without letting this video get so long. Okay, rook to a6. We're hitting this d6 pawn, where I wanted to cover all this fun stuff. More fun stuff incoming. There's more fun stuff incoming. That's why I was talking quickly. So, white here has another option. They have d takes e6, which is the most common move and the most obvious one. They have another option, which is knight c3. And a lot of people will see that offsides knight, see the fact there's, oh, queen a5 check. I'm a little bit concerned about that. Let me bring that back. Let me defend d5. Here's the thing. We're going to bring another one of your pieces offsides. We're just going to take, and queen takes d5. So we're going to bring Mrs. Queen all the way down. So now Mrs. Queen is actually attacking our rook. Let's play knight c6 to deal with that. Okay. What to say about this position? White needs to develop as soon as possible. If white is able to play like boom, 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 they're up a pawn, right? We need to not let them get all those booms. So, here's one boom. We need to play bishop e7. We need a castle as well. They're going to try and play e4. We're going to castle. But what's our secret little trick here? Because it's hard to just, yeah, we can coordinate like an attack on that queen and go here and here. But then the queen's just going to kind of move out of the way. It's an option, but not the best. The best, it looks like white's actually going to castle imminently. We don't even have knight b4 to try and go knight c2 because we don't want to lose our rook. The best option is a really, really sneaky one. Because here, white's done like the most obvious stuff, right? They just go boom, boom, boom. They just need one last boom. Here's the issue. Bishop a6. Really, really clever resource. Really clever resource, and this is going to come back again. If they castle, they lose the bishop. Nobody's there to defend it. Boom. They need to take it. And now instead of just rook takes, check. Bishop d2 takes. Oh no. Oh no, what happened to your castling? Sorry about that. We just took that diagonal. Want to castle this way? I didn't think so. So that king is now going to just be in limbo for a little bit while I play bishop to f6, while I try to target that b2 pawn. I'm going to bring my rook into the game, get you on that file where you stand, and you're going to have a hard time escaping. So that's a pretty fun situation. They can't take d7 either, because after rook to d8 here, or even rook fd8, this queen needs to move away, and really everything's firing on all cylinders for black here. Wow, it's minus 3.5, guys. It's minus 3.5 this position, just because white has nothing. Just because they're cut off from castling and their king. Like, it looks like they're close to castling. They're not even close to castling. They just won't be castling. We're going to take b2. We're going to make that rook move. We're going to take everything. And we're going to punish that king for being in the center. So, yeah, bishop a6, kind of a really nasty resource that they need to be aware of. And it works for any square that the bishop goes to. Bishop c4, we're going to play bishop a6 as well. They can't castle here, even though it's defended, because after knight b4, we're going to be attacking the queen, and then it won't be defended anymore once the queen moves away. So there, they've lost a piece. So again, they'll have to take queen a5. The best bet they have is to go queen d2. Very unnatural moves. Only 21% of people have found that. Queen d2 takes to go queen e2. Now, in this situation, they're doing a little bit better. But still, I actually just turned off on the engine here. After bishop f6, it's 0.0. Because what we're going to do is we're going to move our rooks this way. And we should kind of have no issue getting at least one pawn back with all the threats we can make down here, Benko style. So, fun stuff. So, yes, if they come back just knight c3, all we're going to do, trade everything on d5, knight c6, get our king castled, and then hit him with that nasty bishop to a6 resource where we can check and take back the bishop with our queen, cut him from castling that way. Fun stuff. They think we were there to attack the queen, but really the queen was just off sides. It's a resource we can use, absolutely. But the other issue is that it wasn't there to, say, like, defend the bishop on e2 or to play queen to e2, shielding that diagonal. Unless they did that, right? Anyway, okay. Cool stuff there. Here's the coolest stuff upcoming. D takes e6. F takes e6. What to do now if you're white? Ooh, what about this most common move and this really tempting check? I have two pieces out. I have this knight. I have this queen. What if I put it together and go check? Takes. Wow, I'm up a pawn, and I have this really nice queen sitting in your territory, cutting your castle, attacking your pawn. You don't have a dark square bishop. What are you going to do about it? Oh, this is what I'm going to do about it. Knight to e4. Knight to e4, attacking this, defending c5. Now where are you going with your queen? Where are you going with your queen? You better be very careful. If you choose the most tempting option, queen to e5, attacking this, this, and this, you're going to lose right away. Queen to a5 check. You don't have bishop to d2 because your queen is not supporting that. Bishop to d2, I will take it for checkmate. So you have to go here, knight takes f2, and here, like, there's a lot of things that win, but castles is just one of them. Defend g7 and take the rook next turn. So queen to e5, not an option. White here has a few options I'm going to cover. I'll cover queen f4, queen d3, queen d1. Spoiler alert, white is worse after all of them. Okay, well, I'll actually get to that in a moment. Hold that thought to myself. Queen to f4, it's an option, and it's kind of an appealing one because it kind of stops our castling a little bit, right? Like, we can't legally castle through that. Okay, no matter. We play d5. Great center, great knight, and with the queen on f4, a little added bonus, we can play rook to f8, hit the queen, and then try and take f2, right? So here, if you're white, you need to play knight to f3 to shield that. But we play knight c6, and we have a lot of ideas. I have these arrows on there, spoilers for what I'm going to say. Yeah, I was going to say knight b4. Here's an important pattern in chess. I've mentioned this on my streams before, and I've taken advantage of this on my streams before. When your queen leaves home, whether it gets traded or does whatever, we talk about f2 all the time, and I just talked about it with rook to f8. C2 or c7 is an important point, because here in this situation, like if we got another move, knight to b4, how are you defending c2? If not with your queen. Really, really tough situation. In fact, most people here, the most common move makes the matters even worse after e3. Because it actually, well, to e3's credit, it does have this idea of going bishop check real quick and then castling out of this fork. So, it loses for a completely different reason. g5. Really nice move, g5. There's no more queen to e3, and so this queen is going to run out of squares. Remarkably. It's remarkable. But yeah, the queen's not in a good spot. We can hit her with g5. g5 is defended by the knight and the queen. Queen has no squares other than g4. And after h5, queen has no squares other than h3. And now you could play g4 with the fork, but they'd have queen h4 and you're only winning a piece. You play her e5. Opening all this. Look at her pawns. How did that even happen? We're hitting the queen there. G4. Just take this. And yeah, I mean, you can even like castle next in this position, so that after knight to, so because you're attacking this, right? And that, so there's no bishop to b5 check here. And white can't do anything to you because their pieces kind of suck, and you kind of control everything in this position, so it's hard for them to really get to your king. And yeah, we're threatening knight to c2, and we're gonna have a really, really fun time. And we're down no material here. So in fact, we're up. No, we each have 5 pawns. Interesting. So not an option for white to go queen to f4. We can keep taking the center, keep advancing, keep coming at them, and this all works out for us because their king is in the middle and because they have no development that helps them control important squares in these lines. Or they don't have as much as us, at least. So queen to f4, not a good choice for that reason because it gets in the line of this f-file, and we can hit it with g5 and h5 in some lines, and it does defend c2. Okay, here's another option that maybe does a little more. It comes all the way back to d1, all the way to home base. So what's the point here? What's going on? We can castle, attacking f2. They play knight f3 defending, play knight c6 coming out, e3. This is a little funny. Because here, if you're black, you have a couple options. There's nothing wrong with like just playing d5 and then trying to hit him with like bishop to a6, trying to play queen to a5 check and recapture a6, try and cut that. You have a lot of fun options. One of them also is knight to e5, just really trying to make that knight move because it's actually kind of worth it for this fork to just take that rook. So knight to e5 really putting a lot of pressure there, so they can, because you want to play takes with the rook there, you can force them to play pawn takes f3, which would be really nice and really ruin their castle. Just using this absolute menace of a rook. We've played f takes e6 there, and this rook's become so good. Bishop e2, bishop a6, try and force that bishop away, so that, yeah, now you can take f3, force pawn takes f3 in that position. Or, for example, if castles, you can play takes and take, and now, again, force pawn takes f3, and now this is probably a really bad situation. Oh, yeah, it's checkmate. Wow, check. Oh, nice move, queen h5 with the pin. Queen h5 with the pin, that's the key right there, and white can resign, minus 5.5. Fun lines if you can force pawn takes f3. Another fun line here that actually both Leela and Stockfish alike both agreed on was this crazy move g5. When your position's good, your position's good. What can I say? Just keep your foot on the gas pedal. g4, trying to make that knight move and take f2. That's the threat. They can't play bishop here, castle, and get their rook to defend in time. So what to do? Well, they've got to play h3. But now But now this resource with knight e5 is even better, because now after takes, yeah, our king's a little exposed. Like, they can even go to some kind of menacing square, but we're just going to take, and we're going to come out the g3 square because their pawn is on h3. And so here, black is actually just doing excellently, and there's really nothing white can actually even do. Queen to e7 can defend everything, and knight to g3. Black's actually up in exchange. So a pretty fun line and kind of an improved version. Bishop e2. What we can do here is g4. Again, we just want to play knight takes f2. Take here. Do it. Do it. Here, this is probably actually even more fun because we have queen to h4 check in this line. And it's a little bit testy. You don't need to expose your king, but these were just like really fun lines. I was looking at takes, knight takes. Now we've got both knights hitting here if white elects this option. If they castle to defend, now after queen c7, they'll lose immediately. We're going to take, and we're going to try and go queen to h2. If they play g3, we're going to sacrifice and win the game. So just really cool stuff in these lines. That we're able to really just keep our foot on the gas pedal, even at the expense a little bit of our own king safety. Although you've got to be careful about that. So be careful about trying this at home, kids. But you got to be careful about compromising your own king safety. But if they can't get you, they can't get you, right? So, you know, maybe. Another option white has instead of h3 is bishop to d3, targeting this knight. The point is we'll go takes, and then g4. So we compromise our king safety, but we compromise theirs even more. We want to take that knight and then go queen to h4 check. So an interesting option here, but we've already gone kind of far down this queen d1 rabbit hole. Let's talk about the most common move, queen d3. I actually had a game in this position. Believe it or not. I started playing this kind of recently, but I've only gotten 1 or 2 total games with this stuff, but I got this exact position. So my game was here, d4. It was just a 3-0 game, regular one. My opponent was 2250, c5, right? So we got our custom move order, e6, take. They went for the knight d6 check, knight to e4. They came back queen to d3. And so here I just played d5, defending my knight to f3, castles, e3. There's better options here, but one that we have all the time, especially with the queen on d3, is just to play bishop a6 and then take. So we mess up their castling because they have to play with the rook or the king. Either way, they can't castle. So here, this is just like a really, really nice position. And again, a3 does nothing to stop knight b4 when you have this pin. So this pin's really, really nice. Queen b3, queen d6, another nice move. The point here is that, 1, I'm targeting h2 in some lines. 2, I'm now threatening c4. Because takes, they will lose their rook in this line in exchange for just taking the knight. And if I play c4, my next move is going to be knight d3. Or even knight d3, right? So that's a really fun option. Bishop to d2 my opponent played, and to really make knight takes d2 they could play, but king takes d2 they had to play to make sure the rook was defended here so that I didn't have c4, that they could just respond with queen takes b4 to coordinate their rooks right away. So I just here played knight c6. Neither of us were playing the absolute best way here. I played d4, which is a little premature. I can just play e5, really just play e4, hit that knight, try and take h2, d4. They really have no safe haven for their king here. This is so much compensation. I played d4. I didn't play this the best by any means. Rook takes f3 was actually a winning sacrifice in this position that I missed. But takes, and it just kind of ended. After keeping my foot on the gas pedal for so long, they just kind of blundered this fork. So that can happen to you, but better option that you can play in this line is just knight c6 immediately. Just trying to go knight b4, trying to sneak into c2. Really good option. But yeah, the bishop can come to a6, king can castle, e5. You can really just mow with that big pawn mass. Speaking of mowing with that big pawn mass, let's talk about some of the main options for white in this position. So knight to d6 is a bad move, but it helps us that it's statistically the most common move. White has a couple other options, which is knight f3 and knight c3, which are the second and third most common moves, and the moves I will cover now. Knight to c3, we're just going to play d5. And yes, so here's the thing. White could try to play this move bishop to g5 before e3 to try and not jam in their bishop. The issue for them is that we're going to play d4, attacking the knight to e4, and queen to d5. So d4 before they got their pawn to e3, and now with this move queen to d5, it's a really, really nice resource. It attacks here, attacks here. If bishop takes f6, we can take this knight, and something we can do is just bring our bishop to b4, really take advantage of the fact that they cannot develop yet, and bishop to b4 check is actually just going to be so strong. It's such an incredible line. You don't have to remember everything, but just the general vibes of this will help you. I think it takes here, rook g8. I don't even remember everything, but I remember the vibes. For example, like the idea here to just kick this bishop out, play c4, bishop to b4 check. It's so good. This stuff's so good. Like, for example, here, they can play queen takes d4, but after bishop to g7, attacking here. Takes pawn, takes d5. What we're going to do here is we're actually attacking b2, attacking a2. We're down like a few pawns here, but this is actually a very, very good position for black. And the issue is because white is actually losing these pawns. White is actually losing these pawns here because we're going to force this rook to move imminently, whether it's castles or rook b1 or whatever it is. We're going to take there and we're going to eat both of these. We're going to have a very, very strong pass c pawn here. So this is a really, really good position for black. But I just wanted to show you guys that line because it's a pretty fun one. More likely what you're going to get is just this move e3. It is the most common move, after which we're just going to play knight c6. They can come out bishop to b5, bishop to d7. Here, we're going to both sides are going to develop, and you'll get something like this if white does everything right and avoids all these tripwires, right? The question is for white in these positions, and these positions are slight pull for the engine, but the engine really has no idea what to do for white. Like, what do you do next if you're white in this position? You can try playing something like b3. What we are going to do is we're going to play this move knight e5. We're going to try to make these trades happen. We're going to try to trade off for that knight, right? So here, actually, we have a couple options here. Better yet, yeah, knight fxg d7, so that after takes here, we can play, we can come out for a capture. We trade off for this knight. That was the key to defending their whole position. We're going to play queen h4. We're going to play rook f6. We're going to shift this rook over, and we're going to have a lot of fun attacking there. Queen h4 is a nice square we can use as soon as we trade off for that knight. So I like in these lines with the bishop on b5, trying to play knight to e5 and trying to use that f-file and that diagonal to attack with. Another idea that you'll see come up pretty often is to try to just steamroll with these pawns. So, for example, here, so e3, yes, we covered this. White can also play this move, knight to f3. Right, knight to f3 makes a lot of sense. It's just developing. d5. Here, white needs to be careful. They absolutely cannot play something like bishop to f4 or bishop to g5 because even though it looks like this might be good, the issue is we always have queen to a5 check if you don't have this developed. Can force you back to here, and now our pawn's not on d7 anymore. It's on d5, so immediately we are winning a piece in this position. So white here must play e3. So this is a little bit maybe better of an option for white. They don't need to spend that tempo going knight c3 because we can't actually attack this knight anymore as soon as it's defended that way. We don't have a pawn to attack it. No matter, we just play knight c6. So yeah, we don't have the d6 square for our bishop. It's okay because we have a better option. We can now just play e5 right away. So the bishop's not able to come to b5, which attacked this knight and kind of stopped us from playing e5 a little bit. And the knight on c3 also put some pressure here, so we didn't really want to do that as much. But now we can just play e5, and after castle, just play e4. And white here has two options, knight e1 and knight d2. They're kind of equivalent, knight d2, let's say. We're just going to play bishop e7. Knight e1 is the slight preference of the engine, because the knight on d2 really has no future. But here, yeah, just bishop e7, b3, castles, bishop to b2. And we're kind of, I mean, I'm just showing some example moves here. I don't really know what I would do if I were white. Honestly, just looking at this position, right? Just taking a moment to slow down for a sec and have a look at this position. We were able to get a number of achievements. In a situation where it seemed like white should have the center with these pawns here and here, we were able to play f takes e6, force them to go c takes b5, right? Leaving us with these pawns. Then we played d5, we played e5, we played e4, all while their pieces were offside, right? And we took a massive stake in the center, and it's really some pretty nice compensation because there's nothing really so obvious white can do. They can try and play b3 and try and activate this bishop. I thought this was the most logical option. I don't see any games in this position is kind of the issue, or I'm seeing no game found, right? So b3, castles bishop to b2, let's say. And I was just showing some moves here. King to h8 is a useful move in all lines because you might want to play d4, try and play d3 at some moment without bishop to c4 check. So I kind of want to explore these positions a little bit. Knight c2, let's say, just getting that off the back rank. And now here, like, is an idea well, so they maybe want to move this rook without losing this pawn. Something they can do is maybe try and play a4 to maybe defend that a little bit. An idea for black that I really liked is knight g4 and trying to play knight g to e5. And then what we can do is play bishop to g4. If we can trade that off, we can really start getting an attack going. We can maybe play knight to f3 check, or we can just play knight to d3. So that's a really nice spot that we can do. Knight g4, knight g to e5 if you get a position like this. So, but otherwise, it's hard to recommend something for white. You know, so something like this, if you're not playing c2, you can play f3 maybe, let's say. f3, you know, like any break in this position at all. Hard to say what you achieve so much. You know, you can take it, but just knight takes e4, and now maybe after bishop to g5, I'm just going to kind of attack that pawn, and maybe not the best. I don't know. I don't know about f3, how much it really achieves. But yeah, the engine gives like a very minor pull for white, but it's hard to say like because the engine likes pawns, but it's hard, but it doesn't offer any actual ideas for how to play. So from a practical point of view, I'm really excited to get a lot of games here with black. And statistically, I think like at least at my level, I think this is going to be the most common thing I get. Going all the way back here, right? All the way back here, d5. They're going to take this, e6, take here. And then we're just going to take this whole center, just e5, e4, just go right in there. You know, if they never play knight c3 to bring it back. Otherwise, if they did play knight c3 to bring it back, you can keep that pawn at e6, bishop d6. That's kind of a nice little setup there as well. I kind of like that. But yeah, e5, e4, and then just develop your pieces. Enjoy this massive center that you get to play behind. And I really like this knight g4, knight g5 idea that I'm going to try to demonstrate. Hopefully, I'll be able to play this on stream against other titled players, against anyone. I'm happy to take this against anyone because there's no like easy refutation at all. It's very difficult what to do. You know, when I am coming up with a gambit, I want to be able to play it myself at my level and win, right? So I'm not here to give you win in 7 moves, but in reality, like, you're never going to actually get that. I'm here to give you real stuff that's actually going to work, that I'm doing my best to surprise your opponents. And so with this tricky move order, I think we've got it. Speaking of, we should go back to White's actual recommendation, right? White's actual stockfish recommendation in this position. What is it? Our threat is not pawn takes c4. Our threat was b4, dislodging this knight. What White can do, we go all the way down to the 6th most common move, 2% of games, a3. a3, because b takes c4 doesn't do much. e4, and they're going to be able to recapture. If you play b4 now, it looks like maybe we still can, but now takes, they can just play knight to a4. They still have a great center here. And now c takes b4 is kind of awkward. This pawn is kind of mobile. This is not a good situation for black. You didn't really achieve what you wanted. If they do play a3, what is my recommendation? My recommendation is to take this pawn anyway, probably. It's not the end of the world. You just play d6. They'll take here, g6, here, right? Like if this is like the absolute worst in your Gambit repertoire here, bishop a6 is a nice idea. Maybe trade that bishop. Knight d7, knight b6. These are all options for you. And then, you know, you can play on the b file there anyway. So, you know, like this great refutation, it gives White a little bit better of a position out of the opening, but I'm absolutely happy to take that risk at any level because it's so unintuitive of a move. But once you explain it this way, of really understanding that pawn takes c4 is actually not our main threat, it is possible to come up with, but, you know, I mean, hindsight's 20/20. I don't think I would have played it myself in any capacity if you showed me this position for White. Okay. Quickly to review, a6 we play right here, and it's because we don't want a4 here, right? And the point is that if we play a6 here, a4 here is just a really stupid move. Thank you for this b4 outpost. I will enjoy it very much for the whole game. So you don't want to do it that way, but we play a6, they play an a3, we play c5. If they play pawn takes c5, we play e6. We're going to collect our pawn back. If they play this e4, we need to play knight c6 to stop their pawn from coming from e5. But we're going to collect our pawn back with a totally fine position. If knight to f3, we're going to take. We're going to play d5, and we're going to have a really nice position one more time. If they play e3, we can play e6, just d5. Use the fact that we have this pawn at a6 to try and play pawn takes c4 and b5. If they play d5, we're going to play b5 and this nice sacrifice. If they play e4, b4, and we go into these interesting lines. Knight a4, we need to play d6, and e5, we need to play takes, and in this important move, d6 right here. And b3, not a good move. We just play g6, bishop g7. Bishop is always operating really nicely there. That's almost always where our bishop goes, regardless. And a3, top engine move. Takes b5, we're just going to recapture. We're going to play e6. d6, not a good move because check forces the knight back, and rook to a6 will pick off this pawn. Rook to a6 will pick off this pawn in this position after we trade off that bishop that could have otherwise defended it. So, yes. Otherwise, they're going to take it. Knight to d6 check, not a great move because of nice move knight to e4 here, and then you can take the whole center and have a lot of fun in this line. Otherwise, just play d5, knight to c6, enjoy your big center, and just try to get them. Try to get them. Go right at them. Their king's there. They haven't moved anything on this whole part of the board. And yeah, this is the situation that I was talking about, where if White just plays knight to f3 and mindlessly does all this, you know, we can still get a really nice gambit here and still have a really nice opportunity to attack. Now, White can't really lose just playing knight f3, e3, bishop e2, but we can do our best to try and make that not good. right? Because it's just so principled. Like what can I say? Okay. I also wanted to cover moves other than knight c3 real quick. Knight to f3. Something you can do here instead, because b5 doesn't really do anything if there's no b4 to attack a knight, right? So, but something you can still do is like e6, and now what a6 does very well is supports ideas for going d takes c4 and then trying to go b5 immediately to defend that or to attack a bishop that just recaptured there. So that's an idea that you can always transpose that into. Okay, and then g3, what you can do here is definitely c5, d5, b5, or even b5 right away, because now the bishop has kind of committed itself this way, and now trying to take c4 looks much better when the bishop can't just develop itself over there. So g3 here is not very consistent with the ideas of the white side of the Benoni. All right, I hope you guys really like this repertoire. For a name, I was thinking the Graif-Benko, because it's like a Benko gambit, but it's a little bit different and has some quirks in its move order. But I think this is really going to do really, really great to confuse your opponents. All right, Gambit Chads, stay tuned. Show me your games in the Discord. Click the link in the Discord below to join. It's an awesome, awesome community of everyone sharing their games and everything and just discussing everything. I'm active in it as well, but so many people are active in it. Great, great stuff. I'm so excited to see your games. I'm so excited to play my games. Join me on Twitch as I do that and on YouTube as I upload more with this. But I think this is really, really phenomenal weapon, and I'm really, really excited about the Graif-Benko, or the delayed Benko. Graif-Benko, maybe. Let's stick with that. All right, Gambit Chads. Peace out.
William Graif, the Gambit man, takes his seat at the board. E4. E5. Knight F3. Bishop C5. The Bushgas Gambit on the board. On with the Gambit classes. Hero pod unlocked.